I now give the floor to Mr. Mohamed Al-Hassan.
معالي رئيس مجلس الأمن Robert Wood,
Your Excellency, President of the Security Council, distinguished members of the Council, honorable ladies and gentlemen, peace and blessings of God be upon you. I have the honor to present this briefing, which is the first before your esteemed Council since I assumed the position of Special Representative of the Secretary-General of the United Nations for Iraq and head of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Iraq, the UNAMI. I would like to thank you and express my appreciation to you all, as well as the Secretary-General of the United Nations and the government of Iraq and Kuwait for the confidence granted, for which I hope to be worthy. I will start by saying, as you have heard many times by now, that today's Iraq is not the same as the Iraq of 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago. Iraq today is more secure, stable, and open, despite the many obstacles facing the country. I am fully confident that this great country, deeply rooted in history and the cradle of human civilization, is capable of overcoming crises and facing challenges towards forging a more secure, bright, and hopeful future. Since the last briefing presented before your esteemed Council in May of 2024 by my colleague Janine Hannes-Plaschart, who I would like to commend for all her sincere efforts to assist Iraq, there have been a number of positive developments, some of which I had the opportunity to witness myself. The most prominent of which are as follows. A major milestone was the successful conduct of the national census on the 20th of November, which I had the opportunity to watch live together with the Prime Minister, Mohamed Sudani. This was the first nationwide comprehensive census to include the Kurdistan region since 1987. Preliminary results indicate that Iraq's population has almost doubled in just over 3 decades, reaching more than 45 million people. Decision makers will now, in Iraq, be able to plan based on reliable facts and figures.
dear colleagues, another key development. After a year of vacancy and various unsuccessful attempts, was the election of a new Speaker of the Council of Representatives of Iraq on 31st October, an important step taken to foster parliamentary dialogue on legislations, which was urgently needed to address the needs and aspirations of the Iraqi people. Committed to improve services, Prime Minister of Iraq, Al-Sudani, continues to invest heavily in major infrastructure projects throughout Iraq. These include constructions and developments of roads, bridges, schools, and transportation networks, which are geared at improving services, creating jobs, opportunities, and improving the lives of the Iraqi people. In a region that is, quote unquote, on fire, Iraq's government has shown strong resolve to keep the country out of widening regional conflicts, which while standing firm as a strong voice for regional peace and stability. Prime Minister of Iraq, al-Sudani, has consistently called for an end to regional tensions, stressing the need for respect of Iraq's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Looking beyond the current conflicts, the government of Iraq is also striving to position itself as a vital corridor for transportation, energy, and trade, leveraging regional partnerships. Such initiatives underscore Iraq's efforts to foster regional integration and prosperity. Positive progress was also made in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. After 2 years of protracted negotiations and delays, parliamentary elections took place in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, thus re-establishing the legitimacy of the region's institutions. On 20th October, I witnessed firsthand in Erbil and Dahuk well-organized and smooth voting operations in some of the more than 7,000 polling stations. With more than 2 million people casting their votes, voters' turnout reached 72%, an increase of 12% over the previous elections. UNAMI electoral assistance has been widely recognized by regional and federal authorities, including the Independent High Electoral Commission, a support which was instrumental in instilling trust and strengthening Iraq's technical capacities for election, something the United Nations should be very proud of. I take this opportunity to congratulate Iraq, the United Nations, and the UNAMI electoral staff for their dedicated efforts. Important to note also that out of the 100 parliamentary seats, women managed to secure 31 seats, which is more than the minimum quota of 30%. As negotiations among political parties for the formation of the new regional government in Kurdistan are underway, political parties have a responsibility to enable women's access to political positions and a seat at the table for them. Meanwhile, the visit of the Prime Minister of Iraq, Sudani, to Erbil following the elections was an important step towards promoting joint dialogue to address the many important issues between the two sides. Mr. President, dear colleagues, these are all positive developments, but tempered by the threat posed by persistence and systematic corruption. Despite the government's efforts to address them, while public debate on corruption is very frequent in Iraq and politicians engage widely on the topic, the issue continues to prevail in Iraq, socio-economic life. The country does require comprehensive changes and reform that will bolster accountability, promote competency, improve transparency, and fortify governance systems. I fully trust that the government is taking promising steps in this direction. And while strengthening state institutions to tackle corruption is crucial, bolstering state institutions, promoting and supporting human rights are all the more important in a country that is moving away from its dark past. It requires strong institutions that safeguards the people's fundamental rights and freedoms. Considering the critical role of the Iraqi High Commission for Human Rights, Iraq constitutionally mandated National Human Rights Institution the selection of a new board of commissioners, regrettably, is still pending. Iraq constructive engagement with the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in August was a positive step. What is important now is for Iraq to implement the committee's recommendations, a critical step to strengthen the protection of Iraq's rich diversity. I'm truly confident and a strong believer in Iraq's ability to do so. President, dear colleagues, an issue that has generated a lot of public debate and international attentions are the proposed amendments to Iraq's personal status law. This is a significant undertaking that have far-reaching implications for women and children. We have extensively engaged with the Iraqi stakeholders, emphasizing the need for a constructive and inclusive dialogue on this issue. We further stressed that any reform to the personal status law should be in alignment with Iraq's international human rights commitments and obligations. And I'm confident also in Iraq's ability to do so. In a country seeking to heal from internal conflicts and terrorism, at the heart of the matter lies the crucial question of justice and accountability. Amendments to the general amnesty law are currently being debated in the Council of Representatives of Iraq. Provisions for amnesty can be a pathway to promote reconciliation and redress grievances of those unjustly imprisoned. To be clear, those responsible for the atrocities should be brought to justice. At the same time, justice should be delivered in a fair and proportionate manner. The impact of Daesh, Mr. President, dear colleague, in Iraq is unfortunately still visible in the camps hosting thousands of displaced persons, the majority of whom are Yazidis. I have myself witnessed firsthand the harsh living conditions in which those people continue to endure and live through. This is unacceptable. It is unacceptable for Iraq. Iraq can do better. Iraq is capable of treating its citizens and its people in a better environment. I'm fully certain that Iraq will be able to provide better living conditions for those who were victims in the first place. My heart and solidarity go to the Yazidis and others who are displaced for so many years. They deserve better. The Prime Minister's decision to establish a national high committee in consultation with the United Nations to tackle the issue of displacement is a step in the right direction. It is, however, not enough. The state needs to invest concretely in creating the conditions for the returns of the displaced, Yazidis and others. For 4 years after its signature, the Senjar Agreement has yet to be fully implemented. As said before, a unified administration in Sanjar and stable security structures are the only way to create conducive conditions for the returnees. And let's not forget that the Iraqi citizens still in Al-Hol camp in northeast Syria. Iraq is but one of the very few countries exerting commendable efforts for the repatriation of their own citizens. I saw for myself the support provided by the government of Iraq, UN agencies, and partners to the thousands of people who are returning to Iraq, a safe Iraq, after a prolonged period of displacement and suffering. More, though, needs to be done to accelerate the return of the people from the hell-like conditions in Al-Hol. We have renewed commitment from the Iraqi government and institutions to have and to repatriate the Iraqi citizens from Al-Hol and other camps in northeast Syria, hopefully before the end of 2025. That said, any other country with nationals in Al-Hol bears the same duty to act and take back their citizens. سعادة الرئيس.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, Excellencies, honorable ladies and gentlemen. Since assuming my post, my colleagues and I have actively tried to promote efforts to build trust and strengthen bilateral relations between Iraq and Kuwait. Thus, we have strongly encouraged the resumption and continuation of negotiations between the two neighboring countries on the demarcation of the maritime border. We have also expressed the willingness of UNAMI and the entire United Nations to present its good offices should both sides choose to avail themselves to that. On the issue of the missing Kuwaiti and third country nationals, UNAMI has continued to participate as observer in the work of the tripartite mechanism, chaired by the ICRC. After more than 3 decades, I can safely say that there is clearly a need to intensify sincere efforts to identify and excavate potential burial sites adhering to agreed upon work modalities. The families of the missing persons have made that request and have been waiting to know the fate of their loved ones, an issue of paramount importance to Kuwait. People, the government, and leadership of Kuwait. We hope that effort will be made to expedite the search for and return of missing Kuwaiti property, including the National Archives. We have to turn this page, which will allow both countries, the neighboring states, to resume all levels of relations. In this vein, I would like to refer to the Federal Iraqi Court ruling, which was issued in 2023. I don't see it as appropriate, it has actually hurt the Iraqi-Kuwaiti relations. In this vein, I would like to stress that we are working with all responsible professional entities in Iraq to regain trust between Iraq and Kuwait. We hope that those concerned in Iraq would be able, as soon as possible, to ideally correct this path in a way that is in line with the relation that gathers both countries.
On UNAMI's transition and liquidation plan, as requested by Resolution 2732 of 2024. While UNAMI continues to ensure the delivery of its mandate, we are working closely with the government of Iraq, the United Nations country team, and UN headquarters to finalize the plan for submission to this August Council by 31st December 2024. Together with the United Nations country team, the mission is also taking steps to enable the transfer of relevant tasks into the forthcoming Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for Iraq. I take this opportunity to stress to this Council the importance of allocating UNAMI's full budget for 2025. This is too crucial in order to enable the mission to deliver its mandate and carry out its transition and drawdown process as smoothly as possible and according to the time frame set out by Resolution 2732. في الختام, and I'm sorry I have talked at length, أود الإشارة.
In conclusion, I would like to stress that I am fully confident that the leaders of Iraq know full well the challenges facing their country and the steps that need to be taken to ensure that Iraq is far away from any problems. This critical and important country in the Middle East. This would establish a new phase focusing on the future, regaining the positive role of Iraq, that pivotal role in the region and the world. More importantly, we should stress that this country was one of the founding states of the United Nations. In this vein, I would like to outline some of the principles that resulted from my meeting with His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani after my meeting with him in Najaf on the 4th of November. First, competence and integrity in assuming public office in Iraq. Second, upholding good neighborliness and preventing any foreign interference. Third, upholding the rule of law. Fourth, restricting arms to state control. Fifth, fighting corruption at all levels. These are core principles that were widely welcomed by political stakeholders in Iraq, since they represent a roadmap for Iraq. As we are moving towards the UNAMI's transition, we stand ready as the UNAMI or the United Nations to assist the country in its endeavor to build a new Iraq, a safe and prosperous Iraq that I would also like to express my sincere content to work with the current Iraqi government and His Excellency Prime Minister Mohamed Sudani in the time remaining for this mission, the UNAMI, that has witnessed so many sacrifices to assist Iraq. Thank you. And excuse my long statement.
I thank Mr. Al Hassan for his briefing.